So Chris Blackwell, how's things
Yeah.
going with you these days? You playing much?
Yeah, mostly writing these days. I just get myself locked up in the studio and compose. That's what I do.
So basically you compose every day of the week, or is it like just,
Yeah.
getting hobby style now? Or are you still doing it
No, just
professionally?
every day.
When's the last time you toured?
That would be 1990.
So it's been
That
a
was
long
back.
time.
Yeah, been a long time. Yeah, not played live for all that time. So I sit in the studio these days.
Now, when you sit in the studio, do you do work for other musicians? Or
Yeah,
yourself?
I mean, I write songs, I write stuff for TV, for movies, for all sorts of stuff. So whatever, but basically whatever comes in, I kind of like to do as much as possible, which is great. Good fun.
Do you find with the internet now you get more jobs, for this stuff?
Do you know, it's more, I do. It's more interesting, actually, because the internet has opened everything up. Because before, if I wrote something before, you'd have to then get a courier to take the CD over to the record company or the publisher or the whatever. And now with the internet, you can just, it's gone straight away. And the person on the other end of the phone is listening to it as you're talking to them on the phone. So it's an instant thing, which is great.
So you're doing mostly work for commercials and film?
Yeah, a lot of that. A lot of TV stuff, a lot of TV commercials.
Now, how different is it to record, something for film than to record for a band, let's say?
Depends. If you're using an orchestra, it's a lot different because then there's a lot of different people involved. So you've got orchestrators and conductors and notators and so on. If you're working for a band, you're kind of just, working within the group that you're in. So there's no outsiders come into it. But if I'm doing stuff for TV, it's just me. I'm just working on my own, so there's nobody involved. But if it does involve an orchestra, then it gets slightly more complicated.
Now, let's go back to when you play with Robert Plant. How did you join Robert Plant?
How did I join? He just called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it.
So your name must have been out there.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, it was. And I got home one day and there was a message on the answer phone and it was Robert just saying, did I want to come along to a rehearsal? And he was off on tour and he was going to be doing an album and all sorts of stuff. So I said, yeah, okay. So I went down to see what it was all about.
And you basically got the gig right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Now and Zen is basically one of his biggest albums, solo.
That was the one. That was the album that he called me for. Yeah.
For going back to that time of recording, how many drum tracks would you have used on this album back then?
We started off with pretty much all of the tracks having drums on, but most of the tracks that came in were written by Phil Johnston, and he'd already got programmed drums on the tracks that he'd written, so they kind of stayed. It was the more live tracks like Billy's Revenge and Helen of Troy and so on, that Ship of Fools was another one, that they had the real drums on, and didn't seem to work with anything else. It just needed a real band, real vibe on it, so that's what we did.
Let's say for all the albums you've done with Robert Plant, has the recording process always been the same?
Well,
or does it change a lot?
No, it changed. Robert's always liked to change things up. So we'd be in a studio for a couple of weeks, and then we'd be in a residential place recording drums in a hallway or something for a couple of weeks, and so it would always change. But it was always fun.
For playing with Robert Plant, what would be your best Led Zeppelin album?
The typical one, 4 probably, the 4 Symbols, that one. Yeah, I think because that was one of the first albums that I ever bought, and so it was very formative on me. I think as a youngster, it was it kind of set things in motion in my head. It was Deep Purple. It was bands like that, Pink Floyd and so on, that just kind of got into my head and established the route I was taking, I guess, really, without realizing it. So Led Zeppelin 4 was a very, very formative album for me. So I would say that was my favorite, yeah.
And then in the future, you end up playing with Robert Plant on
that was
his
weird.
best album.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Now, for the world tour, because you did like 2 world tours with Robert Plant,
Yeah.
How good was them, back in the day?
We were very lucky. We kind of caught the tail end of the big tours, so they don't happen like that anymore. We had our own plane. We had everything pretty much, and it was an amazing experience. And the gigs were phenomenal. I mean, big stadiums, and it was fantastic fun. And I sadly that that isn't the case these days. I don't think as much anyway. We always seem to be following around other bands like Def Leppard and so on. We were always kind of chasing them around America and Europe. So we'd catch up with them every so often and have a party, and it was good, really good times.
I'm sure you met a lot of people along the way in the industry.
Yeah, we did. We were always bumping into people, as I say, we were catching up with bands, or bands would be catching up with us, and it was like, it's just all out there doing it, and it was nice to meet people and just have a chat about what their experiences were as well.
Would you say, like, back then, playing without the internet, how did you spend time off, on the road in your days off?
Well, that has changed so much. I mean, Charlie Jones, who was the bass player when I was with Robert, he's still out there touring. He's touring with Goldfrapp now, which is a kind of a big European English band. And he said that it actually changed everything because, when we were touring, if you had girlfriends and wives back home, it was kind of like you had to send faxes. So you'd have to go, call down to the hotel. Is there a fax for me? This is how it worked. But now, of course, with wireless internet and so on, you're up in your room on your laptop talking to the world. So it's completely and utterly different. Doug Boyle, another one, he's the guitarist with Robert. He's touring with Nigel Kennedy, and he was recently in Australia, and I was getting Facebook stuff from him, and emails from him from Sydney and Melbourne and so on. So I mean, that in that respect, it's changed an awful lot, really. I mean, and you asked me what did we do to fill in the time? Well, I can't remember to be honest. But I mean, I guess because we were flying everywhere in our own plane, we didn't really have a lot of downtime together. Because, you'd kind of leave at 4 o'clock, go to the plane, fly to the next gig, go straight on stage, come off, and go back to the hotel. So the rest of the day was kind of ours. There was no, if you're traveling on a bus, you're kind of traveling all day and all night and so on. But we were very lucky to be able to just travel, half an hour or an hour to get somewhere. So we didn't really have a lot of downtime as a unit. But I guess, again, now the way things have gone, you can have your own little portable recording set up in a suitcase and, be linked via internet to other musicians all over the bloody planet, and just send stuff backwards and forwards. It's very exciting to be doing it now, I should think.
How was the backstage area back then, with Robert Plant being who he was? Was it like extra stuff in the backstage area, like a Rolling Stones?
Sometimes. Sometimes there was usually I'm not extravagant. No, I mean I've heard some weird stories, of some people having teepees and wigwams backstage and all that. We didn't have any of that. It was just a couple of rugs, a couple of sofas, potted plant. That was it really. Nothing too extravagant.
Now, how did the equipment travel to these gigs?
Well, we had 3 or 4 big rigs, so they'd all get. The stage crew would break it all down each night, pack it into the trucks, and that would go overnight to the next show and be set up by the time we got there. And they were the big American trailer rig thingies with the big silver chimneys on top. Amazing things. And it used to amaze me how the guys would keep them so clean. They'd be out there polishing them the whole time. All the chrome was really shiny and they looked amazing.
How many drum techs did you have then?
Just the one, Martin. He took care of me. He was my. We each had a guy, and Martin was mine. And he made sure the heads were all changed every night, and I had enough sticks, and the cymbals weren't broken, and just used to make sure everything was nice and clean and polished and tight and ready to go.
How long would a cymbal last in a tour like that?
Well, that depends. The little ones, kind of maybe 2 shows, but the bigger ones would last pretty much the whole tour. But the small ones would get a bit of a hammering. So maybe 2 shows.
Like small ones, you meaning a 16-inch crash?
No, like an 8-inch or a 10-inch splash. The little ones. I used to use those a lot, and The 6 inches weren't even worth bothering with because I couldn't hit them anyway. They were too small. Couldn't see them. The 8s and the 10s, they got they did get a bit beaten up.
And you say you change drum heads every night of the shows?
Snare drum every night. Toms, I think that was every 2 nights, and then the bass drum every week.
So they must have been taking a big beating every night.
Yeah, they were, the snare especially, yeah. And there were a couple of times when I went through a bass drum head during the show, and Martin would have to kind of slip the bass drum out and replace it with another one. So yeah, it was good fun. It's very good fun.
When you're on stage, what do you remember of the sound quality? Like, what would you have heard on that stage?
Just me. I had just drums in the monitors, so I could hear the other guys, but mainly just drums coming through. And I wore earplugs too, so it was quite loud, so I needed to feel it coming through the monitors. But pretty much just me. I mean, I could hear everything I needed to hear from the other guys coming off the stage.
How many monitors did you have? Like 2?
Me, I had a tower, so I had like a bass bin, 2 mid-ranges, and a horn, so that's like 4, I guess.
And in that you'd have like a little bit of Robert in the mix and bass also, presume?
No, just me. Just me, because Charlie was standing next to me, so I could hear his cabinets anyway. But it was just drums in the mix.
And did you hear Robert plant at all?
Oh yeah, you could hear him.
Okay.
You could hear him anyway. Yeah, he was everywhere. You could just hear him coming off the stage. So.
Now, Chris, in your sessions with Robert Plant, is there any unreleased material that was never featured on anything yet?
Yeah, there is. There's quite a bit. I mean, we did loads of stuff in Cornwall, a studio called Mono Valley, and yeah, there are some tracks that have not been released. I don't know whether they ever will be or not, but you never know. Could be. Who knows? Good stuff too. I remember some of it was really good.
Now, for songwriting, you write with Robert Plant?
Yeah.
How was that writing with him? Take time, or is it quite easy going?
Very easy. Very, very easy. I mean, what would generally happen is I'd write the track in my studio and just give it to him, so it would be a whole backing track, and then he'd write the lyrics and the melody on top. We did get together a couple of times to sort of thrash it out, and it was very easy working with him. I mean, he's full of ideas, and it wasn't hard at all. Very, very simple, very straightforward. Very nice, actually. It's very rare that you get to work with somebody who's kind of bouncing ideas all over the place like that, and it was good.
Are you still in contact with Robert Plant?
I do see him occasionally. Yeah, I haven't seen him for a while, I must admit, but no, we kind of keep in touch. I mean, he's as you know, he's always busy. He's always out there and doing stuff. He's never sitting still, so he's kind of hard to pin down. But no, we bump into each other from time to time. Yeah.
Do you find that people that are so busy, that's what keeps them so healthy today?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, I know he's quite a healthy guy anyway. Or he was when the touring I did, and I know subsequently he kind of looks after himself. So, and I think you need to now. I think the days of overindulgence in drugs and alcohol are they've taken their toll. Too many people paid the price, and I think people have wised up to it and realised that well, okay, if I'm going to stick around for any length of time, I need to look after myself. Especially, if you're going to be working at the rate that he works at. I mean, he hasn't stopped either since when? I mean, since Zeppelin, he's never stopped. He's just always been out there doing it. And you got to look after yourself. You couldn't possibly do that without being healthy.
Do you find sometimes when you're always in the air flying, it gains time on you, or is it just because they're not in tour bus? Are they winning time in their life?
It's a weird one. Too much travel is boring for a start. That's why it's better to fly, because you get it out of the way quickly. It's a very romantic notion that touring is an amazing experience. Well, it is an amazing experience. But after your second week on a tour bus, looking out the window at America, those long straight roads, and it just wow. I mean, no, it can get very tedious. So flying is definitely the way to go. But Yeah, you do. You do find that. I think the days drag. If you're bussing it everywhere, the days really drag. And I really have a lot of respect for those guys who are still, schlepping up and down the roads there. It's a hell of a thing to do.
Did you ever meet Jimmy Page backstage at a concert?
Yeah, I did. We played with him. We played with him a few times, and yeah, we used to hang out. Yeah.
Going to microphones, and now when you recorded the albums, is there any specific microphones you guys use, or is it just let's take out the regular SM57?
On Robert's voice, it was an SM58, which kind of I found amazing. I remember we were recording Network News, and I was producing the track at the time, and I had Robert in the studio, and we were trying out different mics with him, and it just kept coming back to the SM58, and that was, that's like a $150 mic, and that's the one that works with Robert, so that's the one we went with. On the drums, I am not sure, actually, because we used a lot of different mics to get a lot of different sounds in different rooms, so probably the usual suspects, the AKG 414s and so on, but probably an SM57 on the snare, maybe some Royers. I'm not absolutely sure about that. I didn't pay too much attention, I have to admit.
Was there multiple micings, like let's say on the snare drum and stuff?
Yeah, we tried that, but invariably went back to just very simple, overhead mic, kick drum mic, and a couple of ambients, because that tended to be how we got the best sounds. I mean, simplicity is often the best way, and I do that today. Even if I'm recording a kit, I'll just put one on the kick drum and two ambients over the top, and leave it at that, and you just get an amazing drum sound like that. Which is, effectively that's how Bonzo used to record, and so it kind of works.
For a live situation, would it be like, just always the same microphones going on those drums every night?
Yes, because the mics were tied into the kit, so the mics were always part of the drums, if you see what I mean. So they just took the mics off the holders, but the holders stayed on the kit.
Okay.
So it was always the same mics. And again, I can't remember what they were on the toms. They were quite small, little black jobbies. Can't remember what they were called. But there were mics everywhere on the drums. It was ridiculous.
How was soundchecks back then? Did it last long?
We didn't do soundchecks. We did production rehearsal for a couple of weeks before the tours, and during which the sound guy Clive would come and do the sound as he would be doing front of house. And Kenny, the lighting guy, would come over from San Francisco, and he would stay on American time. So we'd be in England. He'd kind of come over and sleep during the day. Clive would record the sound check, the production rehearsals, and give the tape to Kenny. And then Kenny would come in the evening when we'd gone home and just play the tape through the system and work out the lighting. So that's how that kind of worked. So when it came to doing the actual shows, Clive really had the sound down pretty much, and he used to do his own sound check. He had oddly enough, he had a CD of Peter Gabriel, and it was a track called, what was it called? Da 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 da. What's that one?
I'm not sure.
Whatever that track is. Anyway, I can't remember what it's called now. He used to play that track through the system and set the system up in the hall to that track. So we didn't used to bother sound checking. We didn't used to have to, because Clive had it pretty much nailed by the time we got there.
And if the crossovers sounded that good with that song, Robert Plant would sound good.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
An interesting way, to look at that.
Yeah, I think so. It's not done very often, but it worked for us, and it meant we could pretty much know every night that the sound out front was going to be pretty, spot on. Nothing changed on the board. I mean, the board was set pretty much the same for every night as well. Same with the on-stage monitoring, that was set the same. We just turn up and play.
What would be your best gig ever with Robert Plant?
Probably the first one, and that would have been Quebec in '88. First, I mean, I had no idea what to expect. We'd come in from Europe. We'd done Europe, and we'd done that thing, and England, and so on, and that was great. First, setting foot in the States, and then crossing over to Canada and turning up in Quebec. The first show, 15,000 people. I couldn't hear a thing on stage. The crowd was so loud. It actually took me completely by surprise that I could not hear my monitors. I had to have my monitors turned up because the volume coming from the audience was just so loud. It was amazing. I would say that was my most memorable one. And then, of course, Madison Square Gardens, we did that a few times. That was an ambition of mine. So that was an amazing thing. Nebworth here as well. That was 125,000 people. That was amazing. There's been a few, but I'd say the first one in Quebec, that was my favourite.
Wow, just like Beatlemania.
No, it was incredible. In fact, we went over to Hawaii and we did a gig in Hawaii, and part of the ceiling fell down in the stadium in Hawaii because the crowd was so loud. It was crazy.
The crowd pulling down the ceiling with volume. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. It was amazing.
Where do people find your work now? Is it mostly online?
I've got a website, and there's a load of stuff up there. But generally, it's all over the TV, and it's all over, wherever I can get it, basically. And I'm hoping to move into movies in the next year or so. That's what I really want to do, start composing for movies. But yeah, there's a website, www.chrisblackwell.co.uk, and you can check out bits and pieces of mine on there. There's a few films and stuff as well. There's some Robert Plant stuff on there.
Awesome stuff. And it's an awesome website and great biography you got in there.
Yeah, I've tried to make it kind of interesting. I'm actually having it redesigned. There's a guy working on it at the moment, so it's about to be relaunched. But the old one looks a bit old and clunky, but, it works, and you can see what's going on.
And you got great photos there with the Robert Plant days.
Yeah, there's some good photos on there, yeah.
Keep on adding the photos if you have any.
Oh, I will do, yeah, definitely. I keep digging them out, actually. Every so often I'll find some stuff and just scan it in and whack it up there, yeah.
Well, Chris, it's been a real pleasure talking to you with all the information you gave us.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
It's really dead on, really good.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, it's good talking to you too.
All right, you have a great night, and
you too.
I'll have a great day here, okay?
Yeah, have a good day, yeah.
You have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you again. Bye-bye.
Take care. Cheers, bye.